My name is Doris, and I'm 20 years old. If I close my eyes, I can still hear my dad's laughter echoing through our house, deep, warm, and so full of life it made everything feel brighter. He was the kind of father who'd build you a treehouse one day and teach you algebra the next, who'd stop whatever he was doing just to listen. To me, he wasn't just my parent, he was my anchor. Our house always smelled like his coffee and motor oil. On weekends, we'd go cycling along the quiet road by the lake. He'd let me win sometimes, pretending to pant dramatically. "You're getting too fast for me, champ," he'd laugh. I didn't know back then that those moments would become the last safe memories I'd ever have. Mom was different. Always busy, always distracted, floating through life like she had more important places to be. She wasn't cruel, but there was a wall between us, invisible yet impenetrable. While Dad and I built kites in the yard, she was usually on the phone laughing with her friends about sales or spa appointments. Everything changed the night the phone rang. I was 17. The light from my study lamp made the room look unreal, still heavy. I heard Mom's voice downstairs trembling, then breaking. When I came down, she was on the couch, mascara streaked down her face. Two police officers stood in front of her. I'll never forget the look in their eyes when they turned to me. "A drunk driver, head-on collision, dead on impact." My world collapsed in one sentence. The funeral was gray and wet. I remember gripping the umbrella so tight my knuckles went white. People told me, "He's in a better place," but I didn't want him in a better place. I wanted him home. For weeks, I'd sit in his chair after school, hugging one of his flannel shirts, breathing in the fading scent of him. Mom barely looked at me. She'd started wearing perfume again, going out more. When I asked how she was holding up, she said flatly, "Life goes on, Doris." It was 6 months later when she announced she was getting remarried. No warning, no conversation, just a quiet dinner, then her sudden calm voice saying, "I think it's time for a fresh start. His name is Richard. He makes me happy." Happy. The word tasted wrong. I sat frozen as she described him, a responsible man, successful with 2 daughters your age. She sounded proud, like she was listing accomplishments. When I didn't respond, she sighed. "You'll like them. You'll have sisters now." But when Richard and his daughters Ashley and Brittany moved into our house a month later, I realized I'd lost more than my father. I'd lost my home. Richard was a man who filled every room he entered, loud, confident acting, as if he'd owned the place since birth. The first thing he did was sit in my dad's favorite chair, crossing his legs and kicking off his shoes. I watched him from the stairs, my stomach twisting. He noticed me and smiled like I was a stranger. "Doris, right. Your mom told me you're a smart one," he said. Then he looked around, nodding. Big house. A lot to keep up with. Ashley and Brittany were worse. Pretty polished, always laughing too loudly, leaving messes wherever they went. They called my mom by her first name within days. I caught them in my dad's study once, flipping through his books like props. When I told Mom, she just said, "They're getting comfortable, Doris. Don't be so possessive." "Possessive," I whispered, feeling something snap inside me. The dinner table that used to seat 3 now overflowed with noise. Richard talking about his business deals. Ashley scrolling her phone. Brittany bragging about her social life. I sat in silence, my fork untouched, while my mom laughed at Richard's jokes. After dinner, she turned to me. "Doris, help clean up, please." Ashley looked up lazily. "Oh, I'm so full. I can't move," she said, grinning. "I'll handle it," I murmured, picking up plates as my mom watched, approving. That was the first night I realized the shift quiet, subtle but final. Weeks passed. My mom's tone grew sharper, her patience thinner. "Doris, vacuum the living room. Doris, set the table. Doris, don't sit around." One afternoon, I finally asked, "Why am I doing everything alone? Shouldn't Ashley and Brittany help?" Mom didn't even look up from her magazine. "They're busy. You're the one who lives here for free." "For free?" My voice cracked. "I'm your daughter." She put the magazine down, meeting my eyes for the first time that day. "You'll live here as long as you follow my rules. If you don't like it, you can leave." I wanted to shout that Dad would never have treated me like this, that this was our house, not hers alone, but something in her face stopped me. It wasn't anger, it was indifference. That night, I sat in my room, staring at the walls, wondering when she stopped being my mother and became a stranger wearing her face. Downstairs, I heard them laughing, Mom, Richard, and the girls like a real family. And that's when it hit me. I wasn't part of their family anymore. I was just the maid who hadn't realized it yet. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of laughter coming from downstairs, sharp, hollow, like silverware clinking inside my skull. My room, once filled with Dad's warmth, felt cold now. I pulled the curtains open and saw Richard washing his car in the driveway, while Ashley and Brittany filmed themselves dancing for social media. Mom was leaning against the doorway, smiling as if this chaos was the new normal. Doris, she called, spotting me through the window. Come help with breakfast. When I got downstairs, there was already a mountain of dirty dishes piled high in the sink. Mom stood there with her coffee mug scrolling through her phone. Make pancakes, she said casually. They like them fluffy. They, I asked. Your sisters, she said without looking up. They're not my... I started, but she cut me off with a glare so sharp it sliced the air in two. Don't talk back, Doris. That became her favorite phrase. Over the next few weeks, I realized I'd been quietly demoted in my own home. My room was the smallest now because Brittany needed more closet space. My dad's old study, Richard turned it into his office. His voice boomed from it every night, bragging about profits and new clients while Mom listened adoringly. Every day after school, I'd rush home, hoping for a sliver of peace, only to be handed a list of chores. Laundry, vacuum, dinner, dishes. No please, no thank you. Just orders barked from the living room while she and Richard watched TV. When I'd pause to catch my breath, Ashley would smirk. You missed a spot, Cinderella. I wanted to throw the mop at her, but instead I bit my tongue until I tasted blood. Sometimes at night, when the house fell silent, I'd sit by the window with one of Dad's old flannel shirts draped around me. It still smelled faintly like him, sawdust, soap, and warmth. I'd whisper to the dark, Dad, if you were here, you wouldn't let them treat me like this. But he wasn't. So I started writing to him instead short letters I never meant to send. Dear Dad. Mom laughs again, but not the same. She laughs like she's proving something. Richard sits in your chair now. I hate it. I hate that no one remembers you the way I do. I hid those letters under my mattress, the only place that still felt mine. Then the house started changing. First, it was the antique clock missing from the mantel. I thought maybe Mom had taken it to get repaired. Then the painting from the hallway vanished. After that, 2 chairs from the dining set disappeared overnight. I asked casually, one evening, Mom, where did the painting go? The one Dad bought for the hallway. She didn't even flinch. I sold it. You what? It didn't fit the new decor, she said, sipping her wine. Your father is gone, Doris. I don't need his ghost hanging on my walls. It wasn't just a painting, I said, my voice shaking. It was his favorite. Her eyes snapped to mine, cold and sharp. He's dead, and everything he owned is mine now. I inherited it, remember? I stood there frozen, watching her swirl her wine, the deep red glinting like blood in the lamplight. You can either accept that, she said softly, or you can leave. Leave. I was 17. I had nowhere to go. After that, I stopped asking questions. I did the chores, kept my head down, tried not to exist too loudly. But every night, I'd hear their laughter downstairs, the sound of glasses clinking, music playing. My mother's voice flirting and free. They started throwing parties every weekend. Strangers filled our house, drunk on cheap champagne and self-importance. I wasn't invited downstairs. I was told to stay out of the way. The next morning, I'd clean the aftermath wine stains, broken glasses, food crusted on the floor. Once I asked Ashley to help just once, and she laughed in my face. This is your job, not ours, she said. Our dad married your mom. That makes you like the help. Brittany chimed in, eyes gleaming. Maybe we should start paying you. You'd love that, huh? I remember my hands trembling around the trash bag. For a second, I thought about snapping back, yelling, throwing something, anything. But instead, I just turned and left. That night, I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. My eyes looked older, harder. My hands smelled of detergent and lemon polish. That's when I realized something. I couldn't save the version of my mother that loved me because she didn't exist anymore. The next morning, I woke up before dawn and went to the kitchen to make breakfast before anyone else stirred. As I cracked eggs into the pan, the sizzle filled the silence. My mother came down half asleep, hair perfect, nails immaculate. She looked at me, really looked at me for the first time in months. What are you doing up so early, she asked. Making breakfast, I said flatly. She smirked. Good girl. Keep it up, and maybe you'll earn your keep. That line, earn your keep, lodged itself in my chest like glass. I forced a smile, but inside I promised myself something. If she ever tried to take more from me, my dreams, my future, I'd find a way to take it back. Even if it took years. The day I got my college acceptance letter was supposed to be one of the happiest of my life. I remember standing outside the mailbox, the sunlight bouncing off the white envelope with the university's seal on it. My heart raced as I tore it open, reading the words, "We are pleased to inform you." I ran inside, clutching the letter like a lifeline. Mom was sitting on the couch, painting her nails crimson red. Richard was flipping through TV channels. Mom, I said, breathless. I got in. I got accepted. She barely looked up. That's nice, dear. I'll need help with tuition, I said softly. We can use part of Dad's life insurance, right? The sound of the nail polish brush stopped mid-stroke. Slowly, she set the bottle down and turned toward me with that practiced, emotionless face. There is no money left, Doris. What do you mean? It's gone. Gone where? She sighed as if my question were an inconvenience. We used it. Bills, renovations, life happens. I stared at her. Dad worked his entire life for that money. He wanted me to go to college. Your father isn't here anymore, she said coldly. And frankly, college isn't for everyone. You should find a job. Start contributing instead of daydreaming. Richard looked up long enough to smirk. She could always work at my office. Cleaning service could use some help. Laughter erupted from Ashley and Brittany, who had been eavesdropping in the hallway. I stood there gripping the letter so tightly the paper crumpled in my fist. That night I cried in my room until my throat burned. I whispered to the empty air, Dad, I tried. I really tried. The next morning I went downtown and found a job at a small cafe near the bus station. Minimum wage, long hours, burnt coffee smell that stuck to my clothes. But at least there no one called me freeloader. For months I worked double shifts, saving every cent I could. At night I'd come home quietly, wash the dishes, no one bothered to clean, then retreat to my room. My hands ached, my back hurt, but the exhaustion was better than the silence of that house. Then one evening after work, my high school friend Jessica stopped by the cafe. She was all smiles, hair windblown from her bike ride. Doris, you still live with your mom? Unfortunately. She frowned. I'm looking for a roommate. It's tiny, but rent's cheap. You'd finally be free. Free. The word tasted sweet and dangerous. 2 months later, on my 18th birthday, I moved out. I didn't tell Mom until the morning I was leaving. I packed quietly while she was on the phone, her laughter echoing through the hall, when I rolled my small suitcase into the living room. She ended her call and looked me over like she was inspecting a stranger. What's this? I'm moving out, I said. Jessica found an apartment. I can pay my share. Her eyes narrowed. With what money? I've been working, I said. Richard chuckled. She means at that little cafe. Probably makes enough for bus fare and instant noodles. I ignored him. I'm not asking for your permission. Just telling you I'm leaving. For a second, I thought I saw something flicker in her eyes. Surprise, maybe even fear. But then she smiled, that thin, cruel smile I'd come to know too well. Fine, she said. If you think you're grown up, go. But don't expect to come crawling back when life gets hard. I didn't answer. I just picked up my bag and walked to the door. Her voice followed me, sharp and cold. And don't forget, Doris, you'll always be nothing without me. I stopped for a heartbeat. Then I turned slightly and said, maybe that's the best thing that could happen to me. Outside, the air was bright and biting. The taxi's exhaust mixed with the smell of freedom. When Jessica opened the door to our tiny apartment, creaky floors, chipped walls, one small window, I almost cried from relief. It's not much, she said, apologetic. It's perfect, I whispered. That first night, we ate cheap noodles on the floor, laughing about everything and nothing. For the first time in years, I didn't have to listen for footsteps or wait for my mother's voice calling my name like a curse. I slept deeply. In the following months, my life settled into a quiet rhythm. Work, sleep, breathe. I didn't have time for dreams, but I didn't have nightmares either. Jessica became like the sister I never had, kind, messy, loud. Occasionally, Mom would text. Short, cold messages, need to borrow money. Or, stop ignoring your family. I never replied. Still, sometimes curiosity won. I'd check her social media. There she was, wearing designer dresses, smiling beside Richard at some expensive restaurant, Ashley and Brittany posing in the background. Their house looked like something from a magazine, new furniture, marble counters, not a single trace of Dad's old things. One photo made me pause. The caption read, "Family is everything." I remember whispering to the screen, since when? 2 years passed like that. Work, rent, survival. I learned to live on instant coffee and stubbornness. I still had Dad's watch scratched silent, but mine. Every morning before work, I'd fasten it around my wrist as if it anchored me to something real. Then one night in December, my phone buzzed while I was closing up the cafe. Unknown number. Hello, I answered cautiously. Doris, honey, came the voice I hadn't heard in 2 years. My mother's. I froze, heart thudding. What do you want? Oh, come on, don't be like that, she cooed, sugar dripping from every word. Christmas is coming, and we haven't seen you in so long. Why don't you come home for the holidays? Everyone would love to see you. I almost laughed. Everyone or you. There was a pause just long enough for me to hear her mask crack. Then she said too sweetly, "We miss you, Doris. Richard's been asking about you. The girls, too." I stared at the dark window of the cafe, my own reflection looking back. Part of me wanted to hang up, but another part, the foolish part, still craving her love, whispered, maybe she changed. I exhaled slowly. Fine, I'll come for Christmas dinner. Wonderful, she said quickly, relief flooding her tone. See you Christmas Eve at 6. When the call ended, I stood there for a long time, the phone heavy in my hand. Something about her voice. It wasn't guilt, it was excitement. And I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever waited for me back in that house, it wasn't forgiveness. It was a trap dressed up as family. The drive back to my childhood home on Christmas Eve felt like moving through a dream I'd once escaped, but somehow returned to. The roads shimmered with frost. Houses glowed with string lights and laughter. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter with every familiar turn. By the time I pulled into the driveway, my chest felt hollow. The house looked different, larger somehow, colder. New paint, new fence, expensive cars parked out front. But beneath it all, I still recognized the bones of the place I'd once called home. I stepped out with a small paper bag containing a scented candle, a simple gift cheap but thoughtful. When the front door opened, Richard filled the frame, his expression halfway between surprise and irritation. "Oh, you actually came," he said, his smile never reaching his eyes. "Yeah," I replied. "Merry Christmas." He didn't say it back, just stepped aside. Inside, the warmth hit me. Not the comforting kind, but suffocating heat, mixed with perfume, roast meat, and too many voices. The house was full of people. Laughter bounced off the walls, glasses clinked, music thumped softly from somewhere in the living room. Everything gleamed. New furniture, new chandelier, new paintings I didn't recognize. But one thing struck me immediately. None of my dad's antiques were there. Not the grandfather clock, not his wooden cabinet, not even the photo of him and me at the park. It was as if he'd never existed. Ashley and Brittany were at the dining table surrounded by Richard's relatives, all wearing coordinated red outfits, like some twisted commercial. "Oh my God, she came," Ashley muttered under her breath. Mom swept out of the kitchen just then, perfect hair, red lipstick, gold jewelry that screamed new money. She looked me up and down like she was inspecting a guest, not her daughter. "Doris, you're here." "Yeah," I said. "You invited me." "Yes, of course. Come in. Take your coat off." But she didn't move closer, didn't hug me, just smiled, that polite, empty smile I used to think meant approval. I handed her the candle. "A little something for you." "Lovely," she said, already placing it on the counter without even looking at it. Dinner started soon after. The table stretched across the room, candles, flickering plates, arranged like an ad. There wasn't a single seat left. I hovered awkwardly near the end, holding my plate. Mom noticed, smirked, and said, "Actually, Doris, we didn't invite you here as a guest." The room quieted, the laughter dying mid-breath. I felt every eye turn toward me. "What do you mean?" I asked, though I already knew. Mom's voice turned sweet, sharp around the edges. "You'll be helping us serve. Bring out the food, refill the drinks, and keep the table clean while we enjoy the evening." "You can do that, can't you?" A few guests exchanged glances. Richard didn't even blink. He just carved the chicken, uninterested. Ashley and Brittany smirked openly. "Mom," I whispered, "you can't be serious." "Oh, but I am." She picked up her wine glass and looked me dead in the eye. "Let's start with this." Then she tipped the glass over. Red wine spilled across the pristine white tablecloth, spreading like blood. The liquid dripped onto the floor. My breath caught. "Clean that up," she said. Something inside me trembled. Anger, shame, disbelief, all tangled together. For a moment, I considered walking out and never turning back. But my feet wouldn't move. "Clean. It." "Up," she repeated, smiling as if she'd won something. The room went silent, except for the faint crackle of the fireplace. My face burned as I picked up a napkin, pressing it into the stain. No one stopped me. No one even looked away. When it was over, I forced my voice to stay steady. "Done." "Good girl," Mom said. "Now the main course." I don't remember much after that. I moved through the room like a ghost, refilling glasses, carrying plates, pretending not to notice their laughter. I caught fragments of conversation. "She's grown so serious, still single. Poor thing probably can't afford nice clothes." The humiliation burned, but somewhere deep beneath it was something colder resolve. By midnight, the house had emptied of guests. I washed dishes in silence while the sound of their laughter echoed faintly upstairs. My hands were raw from hot water and soap. When I finally climbed up to my old room, it was like stepping into a time capsule. The same faded posters, the same creaky desk, except it all felt foreign now. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the cracked ceiling. This was supposed to be Christmas. Outside, the wind howled softly against the windows. I told myself I'd leave in the morning, no goodbyes, no explanations. But when I woke up, the house was silent. No laughter, no footsteps, no cars outside. Just quiet. On the living room table lay a single sheet of paper with my mother's neat, looping handwriting. Doris, we've gone on a week-long Christmas trip with the family. Watch the house while we're gone. Here's a list of things to do. Clean the bathrooms. Wash the windows. Organize the garage. Vacuum all rooms. The list went on for an entire page. I stared at it, the words swimming before my eyes. Then I laughed, not a happy laugh, but one that sounded like breaking glass. I tore the paper in half, then into quarters, then into dust. I'm done, I whispered. But as I turned to leave, something caught my eye, a glint of light from the attic door. For the first time in years, I felt drawn there. My mother never let me go up when I was a child. She always said it was full of junk. Now, standing beneath that narrow staircase, I felt a pulse of unease. What kind of woman lies about everything? And what else could she be hiding? I reached for the string and pulled. The stairs creaked open. Dust rained down, and I started to climb. The air in the attic felt heavy, stale, with years of neglect and secrets. Dust hung in the light like floating ash. Each step creaked under my weight, echoing softly in the silence. It smelled of old paper, wood, and time. I flicked on the bare bulb overhead. Its weak glow revealed rows of boxes stacked to the ceiling, some labeled with names and years. One word kept repeating in faded black marker, Robert. My dad's name. A chill rippled through me. I knelt and opened the nearest box. Inside were neatly folded shirts, his shirts. The ones I used to tug on when I was little, begging him to play. My throat tightened as I pressed one to my face. It still carried a faint trace of him soap sawdust and the faintest scent of peppermint. The next box was filled with books, history, engineering, old journals, all carefully organized, the way he used to keep them. And beneath them, a small stack of letters tied with twine. I frowned. The top one was dated just 3 months before he died. The handwriting wasn't his. It was elegant, slanted, and signed with a name I didn't recognize, Margaret. I sat down cross-legged and began to read. My dear Robert, I hope you and Doris are well. It's been too long since I last heard from you. Please tell your wife I wish her happiness, though I fear she still doesn't approve of me. I can't help but worry she's keeping you away. I wish you'd let me meet my granddaughter just once. My hands trembled. My grandmother. No, Mom had always said Grandma died before I was born. She said it with such casual certainty that I'd never questioned it. But here were letters dated less than a year ago. I opened another. Robert, I don't understand why you won't answer my calls anymore. Did something happen? The last email you sent seemed different. It didn't sound like you. You said Doris is doing well in school, that she'll be attending college soon. I'm so proud of her. Please tell her I love her, even if she doesn't want to see me. College. My stomach dropped. That meant Mom had been corresponding with this woman, my living grandmother, pretending to be Dad. Pretending he was still alive. I dug deeper through the boxes, finding more letters, newer ones, all unopened and addressed to Dad. The return address was on the same envelope every time: Margaret Holt, London, UK. The final letter stopped me cold. It was dated 2 months ago. Robert, I don't understand. You said you'd visit soon, but I've heard nothing since. Why did you email instead of writing? You never liked computers. Is everything all right? Please tell me the truth. Please, son. I felt sick. 2 months ago, Mom was still replying to this woman, pretending to be my father 3 years after he died. Why? I stumbled downstairs, heart pounding, and went straight to my mother's room. Her laptop sat open on the vanity table, the screen still glowing faintly. She never logged out of anything arrogance disguised as confidence. I opened her email. There they were, dozens of messages, each one signed, "With love, Robert." The latest raid. Mother, I'm doing fine. Doris is in college now. Diane and I are thinking of taking another trip. Life is peaceful. I scrolled down, my stomach turning. Attached were photos of the house, sparkling clean, redecorated, none showing me, none showing Dad's things. My breath came out shaky. Then something else caught my eye, a folder on her desktop labeled Receipts. I opened it. Hundreds of scanned invoices from antique stores and private buyers. Every item listed was something my dad used to own: the painting, the clock, the cabinet. She'd sold it all. Piece by piece, she'd erased him. And now she was selling the memory too. My fingers shook as I pulled out my phone. I started taking pictures, the receipts, the email threads, even a scanned copy of my dad's death certificate I found in her drawer. Evidence. Proof. Then I opened a new email window. To Margaret Holt, email.uk. Subject: The truth about your son. Dear Margaret, my name is Doris. I'm your granddaughter. I'm so sorry to tell you this, but my father Robert passed away 3 years ago in a car accident. My mother never told you. She's been pretending to be him, sending you emails under his name. She's also sold most of his belongings, the antiques, the furniture, everything he loved. I'm attaching proof of all of it. Please contact me. I want to know about him and you. Doris. I stared at the send button for a long time. My pulse was hammering. My hands were sweaty. Then I pressed it. The email whooshed away into the digital void, carrying the truth that had been buried for years. I sat there for a long while, staring at the screen, half afraid, half liberated. Outside, the wind was howling again, loud enough to make the windows rattle. Hours later, when my phone buzzed, I nearly dropped it. From Margaret Holt. Subject: my granddaughter. Doris. I don't know how to describe what I'm feeling right now. I'm crying as I write this. Please, can we talk? I need to see your face. Can we video chat? I blinked back tears and typed back yes, right now. When the screen lit up and her face appeared an older woman with gray hair, kind eyes, and my father's smile, I felt something inside me shatter and rebuild all at once. Doris, she said, her voice trembling. My granddaughter, I can't believe I'm finally seeing you. Hi. Grandma, I whispered the words strange but warm on my tongue. She began to cry. I'm so sorry about your father. I had no idea. She never told me. I swallowed hard. She told me you were dead. Her face crumpled grief, giving way to anger. She lied to both of us then. She's always been a liar. We spoke for over an hour. She told me stories about Dad's childhood, how he'd loved building model ships, how he was stubborn but kind. She said he'd stopped writing after marrying Mom, that she always feared Diane had isolated him. When she learned about the antiques, her tone hardened. Those things weren't just his Doris. They belonged to our family. The house itself, that's my property. I let Robert live there. Your mother had no claim to it. My breath caught. Wait, the house isn't hers. No, Grandma said. It's mine. She's been living there under my generosity. But if she's sold family heirlooms... Her voice trailed off into icy silence. What will you do? I asked. I'm coming there, she said. Tomorrow. We'll confront her together. For the first time in years, I felt something stir inside me. Not fear, not anger. Hope. When we hung up, I sat in the quiet house surrounded by dust and shadows and whispered to the empty air. Dad, I think help is finally coming. The next morning, I woke up before dawn. For the first time in years, I didn't feel numb. I felt alive, trembling, nervous, but alive. My grandmother was coming. The woman my mother had erased from both our lives. I spent the morning preparing. I cleaned the kitchen, opened the curtains, made coffee not for them, but for me. It felt symbolic, like reclaiming the house piece by piece before Mom returned. When I heard the knock at the door around 10 a.m., my heart leapt. I opened it, and there she was, Margaret Holt. Her hair was silver, pulled back neatly, her coat long and dark, her eyes sharp yet kind. She looked like someone who carried entire lifetimes in her posture. For a moment, we just stared at each other. Two strangers bound by blood and betrayal. Then she smiled, trembling. Doris. I knotted my throat too tight for words. She took my hands, her skin cool and soft. You have his eyes, just like Robert. I wanted to answer, but instead I fell into her arms. For the first time in forever, someone held me without expecting anything in return. When we finally sat down in the living room, she looked around and whispered, It's changed. The soul of this house is gone. She sold everything I said quietly, every piece of him. Margaret's expression hardened. I suspected as much. That woman has always been good at pretending. I warned your father, but he was in love. He thought he could fix her. She reached into her bag and pulled out a thick folder, yellowed papers, old letters, and documents. This is the deed to the house. My signature, not hers. I never transferred ownership to Diane. She's been living here out of convenience and arrogance. I felt my chest tighten. She always said she inherited it. She inherited nothing, Margaret said flatly. She had the life Robert built for her. That's all. Her voice was calm but sharp enough to cut glass. We spent hours going through documents, inventory lists, photographs of antiques my dad had inherited from generations before him. There was even a notarized record of each item with signatures and estimated values. Everything Mom had sold was on that list. She'll be back soon, I said. What will we do when she comes? Margaret looked up from the papers, her eyes glinting. We wait. And when she steps through that door, she'll finally understand what it feels like to lose control. That night we made dinner together, simple soup and bread, but it felt sacred somehow. Margaret told me stories about my father's youth in Europe, how he'd loved classical music, how he'd built his first bookshelf from scrapwood, how stubborn he was about doing the right thing. He wanted to bring you here someday, she said softly, to show you where he grew up, the lake he used to swim in. He wrote me once, said he wanted you to know both sides of your family. But after he met your mother, the letters stopped. When he finally replied again his words, they sounded like hers. She isolated him, I murmured. Margaret nodded. She made him believe I hated him. She was always jealous, not of money, but of affection she couldn't control. The words sank into me like stones in water. Later that evening, Margaret sat by the window watching the snow fall outside. She's afraid of me, you know. Afraid? Yes. Margaret smiled faintly. Because I'm the one person who knows exactly who she is. She's built her whole life on lies, and I can end it with one sentence. I shivered. Do you think she'll even come back? Oh, she will, Margaret said. People like her always do. They never believe the storm will reach them. January 1st. At 6 p.m., the crunch of tires on the driveway broke the silence. Margaret and I exchanged a look. Showtime. I sat beside her on the couch, my heart racing. Through the window, I saw them, Mom stepping out first, suitcase in hand, laughing at something Richard said. Ashley and Brittany followed, carrying shopping bags and chattering about their trip. The laughter stopped when Mom opened the door. The suitcase slipped from her hands and hit the floor with a heavy thud. For a moment, no one spoke. Hello, Diane, Margaret said, her tone sharp and composed, the kind of voice that could command a courtroom. Mom's face went white. Margaret. Surprised to see me. Richard froze behind her, his smile fading. Ashley clutched her phone like a lifeline. What are you doing here? Mom stammered. Margaret stood slowly, her presence filling the room like thunder. I came to see my granddaughter. The one you lied to me about. The one you told me was dead. I can explain. No, you can't. Margaret's voice cut through the air like a blade. You've lied enough for a lifetime. You lied to me about my son's death. You pretended to be him. You stole from me, from your own child's father, and you dared to sell my family's heirlooms. Mom's lips parted, but no sound came out. Margaret turned to me, her voice steady. Doris, dear, why don't you show your mother what you found? I picked up my phone and tapped open the gallery pictures of receipts, email threads, even the antique sale records. One by one, I placed them in front of Mom on the coffee table. Her hands began to shake. You went through my things, she hissed. You went through my life, I said quietly. Her eyes darted between us, panic, fury, and something close to fear. Richard tried to step forward. Let's all calm down. Stay out of this, Margaret snapped. This doesn't concern you. The air grew still. For the first time in years, my mother looked small. The woman who had controlled every breath I took, who had reduced me to silence, now cornered by her own lies. This house isn't yours, Margaret said. You were a guest who overstayed her welcome. That's not true. It is, Margaret said, slamming the deed onto the table. My name, my signature. You've been living here out of charity, and now that charity is over. My mother's lip trembled. You can't just take it away. Margaret's eyes were cold steel. Watch me. That night I couldn't sleep. Margaret sat awake too, a cup of tea in her hand. You handled yourself well, she said quietly. Your father would have been proud. I looked at her, tears burning behind my eyes. I was so scared. She smiled gently. Courage isn't the absence of fear, dear. It's standing up anyway. Outside, snow fell in thick silence. The house for the first time felt still almost peaceful. Tomorrow we'd go to court, but tonight I let myself breathe. For the first time since Dad died, I wasn't alone anymore. And the woman my mother feared most was finally by my side. Morning came gray and sharp, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones. But inside the courthouse, it was warmer, buzzing, with voices, papers rustling heels, clicking on polished floors. I sat beside my grandmother, hands clasped tightly in my lap. Across the aisle, my mother sat next to her lawyer, her face pale but defiant. Richard was beside her, whispering something she ignored. When the judge entered, everyone rose. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. Margaret's lawyer began with calm precision, laying out every piece of evidence, the deed proving ownership of the house, the itemized inventory of antiques, the receipts from the stores where my mother had sold them. Each photo, each document hit like a hammer. Then came the emails, screenshots showing Mom pretending to be my father, deceiving my grandmother for years. The courtroom murmured. Mom tried to speak, Your Honor, but the judge cut her off. You'll have your turn, Mrs. Lawson. When it came, her defense was weak claims of misunderstanding, of emotional distress, of doing what she thought was best. But her voice trembled. The calm mask she always wore was cracking. I watched her try to twist the story, painting herself as the victim of grief and confusion. It might have worked if Margaret hadn't stood and spoken herself. Your Honor, my grandmother said, voice steady, accent crisp and deliberate. This woman not only stole property and defrauded me, she deceived her own daughter. She made that child believe her grandmother was dead and used my son's memory as a weapon. That's not confusion. That's cruelty. Her words cut the air like a blade. The room went silent. When the verdict came, it was almost anticlimactic. The judge ruled in our favor. My mother was ordered to repay over $100,000, the appraised value of every antique she'd sold. The court recognized the house as belonging solely to Margaret Holt, and as the gavel struck, something inside me loosened, as if a knot I'd carried for years had finally unraveled. The next few weeks blurred together. Richard packed quickly, dragging Ashley and Brittany along with him. They didn't meet my eyes once. The day they drove away, I watched from the window as the car disappeared down the snowy road. Mom came down the stairs, last suitcase in hand. Her lipstick was gone, her hair messy, eyes red-rimmed, but not from tears, from fury. This is your fault, she hissed. You turned her against me. I stared at her quietly. You did that yourself. She looked like she wanted to slap me but couldn't find the strength. Instead, she whispered, You'll regret this. One day you'll see what it's like to be alone. I didn't answer. When she stepped outside, the cold wind slammed the door behind her like punctuation, final and absolute. Margaret stood beside me, watching through the window. Let her go, she said softly. Some people can't live without their lies. Taking them away is the only real punishment. For the first time in years, the house was quiet. Not dead, just still peaceful. A week later, Margaret and I walked through every room, sunlight spilling across the wooden floors. The emptiness didn't feel hollow anymore. It felt clean. This house is too big for you alone, she said. What do you think about selling it? I looked around, my eyes resting on the spot where Dad's chair used to be. I think that's a good idea. She smiled. Then we'll do it together. We sold the house within 2 months. The profit was more than enough to buy me a small apartment in the city. 2 bedrooms, big windows, quiet neighborhood. Margaret insisted the rest go into a college fund. When she handed me the paperwork for my university admission, I just stared at it, unable to breathe. You're serious, I whispered. Of course, she said. Your father would have wanted this. You've earned your future back. I didn't realize I was crying until she hugged me. You're not your mother's daughter, Doris, she whispered. You're Robert's. Life after that moved in gentle waves. I enrolled in college studying business, something practical, something my father would have smiled at. My apartment slowly filled with small things that were mine, books, plants, photos, warmth. Every Sunday, Margaret called from Europe. We talked for hours about my classes, her garden, the quiet revenge of living well. A few months later, I flew to visit her. The family home in the English countryside looked like something out of one of Dad's stories, ivy crawling up stone walls, windows, glowing golden at dusk. Inside, portraits of our ancestors hung in ornate frames. For the first time, I saw where I came from. Not the lies, not the bitterness, but the truth of a family that had survived. When I returned to the U.S., college began in earnest. I was busy, exhausted, but happy. Sometimes I'd think about my mom, where she might be, whether she'd ever changed. Word reached us later through old acquaintances Richard had left her. She was working retail, renting a small apartment in another city. When Margaret asked if I wanted to contact her, I said no. Some doors, I told her, should stay closed. Months later, as I sat by the window of my apartment one morning, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Doris, please call me. We need to talk. I didn't have to ask who it was. I stared at the screen for a long time, my reflection faint in the glass. For years, I'd wanted to hear those words. I used to imagine what I'd say, all the pain, the questions, the fury. But now, I felt nothing. Margaret's words echoed in my head. Taking their lies away is punishment enough. So I pressed block. And the silence that followed wasn't empty, it was freedom. 2 weeks later, I boarded a plane to Europe again. Margaret was waiting at the airport, waving with that same fierce smile. The air smelled of rain and sea salt. She hugged me tight. Welcome home, she said. And for the first time in my life, it felt true. As we drove through winding roads toward the old family house, I watched the countryside blur into green and gold. I thought about everything I'd lost and everything I'd gained. The girl who once scrubbed wine off a white tablecloth, humiliated and voiceless, was gone. The woman taking her place was free. I turned to my grandmother and smiled. You know, I think I finally understand what Dad meant when he said, home isn't a place. She glanced over. What is it then? It's the people who fight for you when everyone else turns away. She reached over and squeezed my hand. Then you found it. The car drove on sunlight, glinting through the trees, and for the first time in years, I wasn't running from the past. I was walking towards the future one I'd built from the ashes of truth.